In today's video, we're going to create a fully responsive navbar. When it becomes small, it turns into a hamburger menu. When we click it, it turns into an X. And when we click it again, or when we click one of the options, it closes the menu. To get started, I've created an index.html file, a style.css file, and a script.js file. In the HTML, I'm going to write exclamation mark to give us a boilerplate HTML setup. I'm going to change the title to responsive nav. I'm going to link to our CSS file, our style.css file. I am going to write our script file here, link up that, script.js file, save that. And starting in the body, we're going to create a nav element. We're going to give that a class of nav. Inside of the nav, we're going to create a div, and we are going to give it a class of nav underscore underscore logo. We are using BEM, block element modifier naming convention, to name our classes. This div is within this div, so it starts with nav and then underscore underscore logo, because this is gonna be our logo. As we see here, under our logo, we're gonna create our hamburger menu by creating an H tag. It's not gonna lead anywhere, so we're gonna write hashtag there. We are gonna give it a class of nav underscore underscore hamburger menu. Inside of the hamburger, we're gonna create each individual line by using the span element. It's gonna have a class of nav underscore underscore hamburger underscore underscore line. And we're gonna copy it down 2 times using Shift, Alt, and down. I'm gonna save that. They're not showing up because they don't have any styling yet. Under our A element, we're gonna create another div. We're gonna give it a class of nav menu. And inside of here, we're gonna create an unordered list. And inside of here, we're gonna create a list element. And it is gonna have a class of nav underscore underscore menu underscore underscore link. Inside of the list, we're gonna create another A element. We're gonna write hashtag home, and then we're gonna write home. This is our actual links. We're gonna hold Shift Alt down to copy it twice. And we're gonna change the home to about, and the second one we're going to change to contact and contact. And lastly, we're going to create our background, creating a div after our nav element. We're going to give it a class of BG, and it's going to be empty. That is everything for our HTML. Let's move on to our style sheet. We are going to target our body first, and we are going to just remove any margins as well as padding. Set that to 0. Then we're going to create our background. We're going to set it to position absolute. We're going to give it a height of 100 view height. We're going to give it a width of 100 view width. We are going to give it a top of 0 starting from the top, and we're going to give it a left of 0 as well. Then we're going to set our background image. We're going to set it to URL, and then you can link to any image you want. You can also skip this step if you don't want the background. I already have my image here in my project folder, which you can also find in the repo in the description of this video. So linking to this file, like so. Right now it's covering everything else because it's in front of it, but we're going to fix that right now. So we're going to first say background repeat, because we don't want it to repeat. So no repeat. Then we're going to give it a background size of cover. Then we're going to give it a background position of center to center the image. And then we're going to give it a Z index to put it behind everything else by giving a zeta index of -2. Now we see that our nav menu has popped up again. Now to target our nav, we're gonna give it a height of 3.2 rem. We are gonna give it a display of flex. We are gonna justify the content to space between to make the logo on one side and the list items on the other. Then we're gonna align the items vertically in the center, like so. We're gonna give them a color of hashtag FFF or white. Then we're gonna target the nav underscore underscore logo. We're gonna give it a font size of 1.5 rem. Make it a bit bigger. We're gonna give it a margin of auto in the top and bottom. And then we're gonna give it a 1 rem on the left and right, so that we push it a bit from the side here. Next, we're gonna target the nav menu and then the unordered list items within it. We're gonna give it a margin of 0. We're gonna give it a padding of 0. And we're gonna give it a display of flex. Now we see that they line up all after one another. Next, we're gonna target the list items within it. So we're gonna go nav underscore menu ul list. And then we're gonna give them a list style of none to remove the bullet points. Then we're gonna copy down this one, Shift Alt down, and we're gonna target all the link elements. We are gonna give them a text decoration of none to remove the underline. We're gonna make the color also white. We're gonna give them a padding of 1 rem to also make some space between them and also on the right side. And we're gonna give them a display of block. Then we're gonna give them that hover effect. We're gonna target the nav menu and then the list items. And then we're gonna write hover. And we're gonna give it a background color RGBA 255, 255, 255, and 0.5 in the transparency. There we go. Then we're gonna target the nav underscore hamburger. We're gonna give it a width of 1.875 rem. We're gonna give it a height of 1.313 rem. We're gonna give it a display of none. Actually, let's give it a display of flex. For now, we're gonna change that later, but just so we see it, when we're on the desktop, we don't wanna display the hamburger by default, so we're gonna change this to none later. Flex direction of column. Justify content to space around. And position of absolute and top of 1 rem and right of 1 rem. So we are not seeing it yet because it doesn't have any color, because it is the lines that we're actually going to style, but we see that it is there. Now to target the lines and give them some styling, hamburger underscore line. We're gonna give them a height of 0.188 rem. We're gonna give them a width of 100% of its parent. We're gonna give them a background color of white. Now we see it here. We're also going to give it a border radius of 0.625 rem to smoothen out. Let's make this a bit bigger so we can see, to make it a bit more smooth, the rectangle. We're also going to give it a transition of all ease in and out, and 0.2 seconds. This is going to be the transition for when the hamburger turns into an X. Then we're going to create the media queries to actually make it switch between the hamburger menu and the desktop navigation. So we're going to write media screen and max width. And we're going to give that 550 pixels. You can change that to whatever you want, but anything under 550 is going to count within this styling property. So inside here, we are going to change the nav hamburger, and we are going to give it a display of flex. So we already have that, but by default, we're going to change it back here. We're going to change it to none. And now if I decrease the screen size again, let's put it back to 100%, we can see that it is gone. And if I decrease the screen size, we see that the hamburger menu pops up below 550 screen size. Let's see here. We can see the screen size, 550, and it pops back up. Then we're going to target the nav menu. We are going to give it a position of absolute. Then we are going to give it a display of flex. And we are going to align. Let's actually decrease this to the small screen so that we can see our changes. Basically, we're going to change these three navigation links and the container of them to be displaying underneath here. We're going to align the items to the center. We're going to give them a background color, RGBA, and it's going to have 0.2. We're also going to move them by default out of the screen, because to have our transition effect, they actually are above the screen. And then when we click the hamburger menu, they're going to move in within the screen. And then we click it out again, and they're going to go back to outside of the screen border. So we're going to shove them -10 rem from the top, and we're going to give them a width of 100%. So if I comment out this one now, we see that they take the whole width of the screen. We're also going to give them a transition of all, ease in and out, and we're going to spend a bit more time on this transition, 0.4 seconds. Then we're going to target the nav, and we are going to say that the flex direction is going to be column. Then we are gonna align the items to flex start. Then we are gonna target our nav menu and the UL, which is the parent container of the links. And we're gonna give them a flex direction of column as well to make them go one under the other. We're gonna give them a width of 100%. We're going to give it some padding of 3 rem, 0 and 0.6 rem to make a bit of space between them. Then we're going to target our nav menu and then the links within the UL, and we're going to say to text align this to the center to make them in the center of the screen. Then we're going to target our nav menu, and we're going to give it a z-index of -1. We're giving the menu a z-index because we want it to fly when it's transitioning under the logo and hamburger menu and not in front of it. Next up, we're going to target the nav menu, and we're going to say when it's active. When it has the active class assigned to it, which we're going to do with JavaScript later to make it actually work, we're going to move the menu to top from above the top here. And then we're going to target our nav hamburger active, and we're going to say the nth child the number one child of the hamburger, which is the first line, when it's active, when we click on it, we want to transform it by rotating it with 45 degrees. We also want to translate it by moving it actually by 0.45 rem. This is basically what is going to turn it into an X. And we want to also go in the other direction, 18.75 rem. And we're going to copy this one, Shift-Alt down twice. For the middle line, we actually just want to hide it. So we're going to say the nth child 2, and we are going to just give it an opacity of 0. And for the third child, we are going to do a similar translation. It's just going to be minus 45 degrees here and minus 0.1875 rem. Let's save that. So nothing is happening yet because we don't have the JavaScript. But that's all for the styling. Let's uncomment this top here. Save that. Now we see we've moved it up. We've actually moved it a bit too little. Let's try it with 12 rem, 13. There we go. Now it's completely hidden. In our JS file, we're going to create a constant that is called hamburger. It's going to be equal to document.querySelector, and we are going to select the nav hamburger. And we're going to copy this down twice. The next constant we're going to create is called links container. And we are going to say document query selector, and we're going to just say nav menu here instead. And then we are going to call the third constant links, and it's going to be nav menu __ links. Actually link for each individual link. And here we're going to change from query selector to query selector all, because we are targeting every single line here. Then we're going to start by targeting our hamburger, and we're going to add an event listener, and it's going to listen for a click. And when we click on our hamburger, we want to run a function. And inside of this function, we're going to target our links container. We're going to go into the class list, and we are going to toggle, which means adding if it doesn't exist there, or removing it if it is already there, our active class. So if you remember in the style sheet, we have directly targeted the active class here and given it a couple of styling when it exists. So back in our JavaScript, after this line, we also want to target our hamburger. We want to go into the class list, and we want to also give it also an active class. We are giving the hamburger lines and also the hamburger container individually active classes, because it's going to help us with the closing functionality when we have it open, when we are moving between desktop and mobile view. Then we're going to write window.add event listener, and we're going to listen to whenever we resize the screen. And what is going to happen then is we are going to run a piece of function, and inside here we're going to say that if the window match media has a max width equal to 550 pixels dot matches. So if this is true, if the window is 550 pixels, and here we're listening for that to be true all the time, that's why we have this resize function, because if we start with the window being bigger than 550, then this function would have only just ran once. But since we have an event listener that is constantly listening for resizing of the window like this, let's see, like this, then it is always running when we change the window size. Then we're going to run, if that's true, if we've changed the size to less than 550 pixels, we're going to close the menu by calling a function that we haven't made yet. Next, we're going to create a function that runs if we start with a window that is less than 550 pixels. So window match media, and it's going to say max width colon 550 pixels. Actually, we forgot to add in the first match media. It's going to give us an error. We forgot to add our brackets. So like that. And then in our second one, we're going to say dot matches when this is true. Then we are going to run a piece of code, and we're going to also run the close menu function. Then we're going to create our actual close menu function. Inside of this close menu function, we're going to go and target all our links. We're going to say that for each of them, for each link, we are going to run some code. Inside of here, we're going to say that each link is going to have an event listener. And we are going to be listening for a click. So that means when our menu is open, we want to close, because when we've clicked one link, we want to close the menu. We want to be sent to wherever we've clicked, and then we want to close the menu. So then we're going to target our links container. We're going to go into our class list, and we're going to remove the active class, and thereby pushing our menu back up from beyond the screen. Active. We also want to go into our hamburger and also remove the active class. There we go. Let's try our function. It is not working. We have a bug. Let's check out our style sheet, see if we wrote anything wrong. Indeed, we did. Instead of dot active, we wrote colon active here. And we save, and we still have an error. And it's not working. Let's go check on our index file, and we forgot to write a defer here in our script. Let's write that. That removed the error, and it seems like we have a functioning navbar. Let's see, full screen. We see that it is working by taking us to where we want to go. When we are decreasing the screen size below 550, it is turning into a hamburger menu. When we then click it, it has a nice drop-down effect, and it closes whenever we click a link and the X. It is also mobile responsive on every screen. Perfect.